Companies in the cannabis industry say regulatory compliance is a huge burden. Can cannabis help reduce or eliminate opioids for pain management? We're going to discuss that. And today we have another of our great cannabis quiz games called Who Said It? And we're going to be rocking that in a little while. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to VoteProPot-Cast. We're so glad to have you with us today. You know, we don't have with us today our friend Jay Britton, who is on vacation this week. So, hello, Jay. When he gets back, he's still got to edit this. So, but he's on vacation for the recording. Instead, we have I was going to say as our guest, but you're not really a guest. You're part of the show. Faye Berger Mitchell, our chief health and wellness correspondent, who is going to be with us today, going to talk about all kinds of cool, groovy cannabis-related stuff. But first, Andrew's got a story about the former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Oh, yes. As it turns out, back in 2018, two Russian associates of Rudy Giuliani. I think we remember Lev Parnas and Igor Furman. Remember those two guys?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Anyway, they apparently gave like $125,000 straw donation to the then governor Andrew Cuomo, to curry favor to launch a pot business in New York City. So I think there's an investigation. I don't know if he actually took the check and cashed it, but the word is they had it. They were ready to make the donation. I don't know if it went through yet, but it's only Cuomo's fault if he accepts it, and it's not above board. You know, people make donations to politicians all the time. The question is, did these two Russians violate any campaign finance laws? Right.
And did Cuomo if indeed he did accept it, though we don't know whether he did.
Well, no, actually he did. It did.
He did accept.
$125,000 is on a list that said it was paid.
It's okay for them to make a donation and specify what it's for.
Well, no, they made a donation, but they didn't specify what it's for, I'm sure,
right.
You know. But apparently they said, yeah, we did it to get into the pot business. I don't know if you remember those two guys, but I don't know.
Those names kind of seem to keep cropping up, you know, but
here's a bigger problem. I believe, and this happened, I think, in a few other states. We're saying politicians are getting paid off for pot licenses. And it's happening all over the country.
Right. And Jay did a very thorough article on that. And it's the whole regulatory machine is what's responsible for that. You have to get past all this regulation. And one way to do it is to plow through the mountains of regs and compliance documents and fees that are necessary to get through it, or, slide something under the table.
Or both.
Or if we get to a point where it's federally regulated, maybe there'll be a little bit more consistency.
True. That's happening more and more. The more states that are setting up regulations and setting up especially a recreational and medical cannabis systems, the more they're finding a template that they can use again and again. They're coming up with a template.
Right. So, but companies in this industry, and Andrew, you have something to say about this, are just finding that it's such a huge burden, this regulatory compliance.
That's another thing. Oh, wow. Nice segue there, Phil. There was a Harris poll.
It's
recently.
only a nice segue if you don't point it out.
Right.
Well, wait, Jay, edit that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Phil, there was a Harris poll recently that said 63% of the companies surveyed said that compliance is their number one problem. Was because
they're so overwhelmed with complying to all the regulations, to the overwhelming amount of regulations, that they can't expand and they can't innovate. It's really really limiting their abilities. So, right. And they also blame a lot of these regulations on employee turnover, on some businesses saying that we just can't make it work anymore. We thought we could make this work, but the compliance is so expensive. We're not making a profit.
Now, you remember a few months back, we had that regulatory official. She was from, I think, Oregon or Washington, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, who started out as a government regulator in Colorado. And now she's on the client side providing consultation or consultations on, how to plow through all this.
Right. Well, they say nowadays, if you want to get a license, you have to hire a consultant.
You have to hire a consultant. Yes.
Well, there's so many different ins and outs from seed to sale.
Right.
Right. And it goes state by state. They're all a little different. Right. And like you say, there's a template that's kind of being established for it, but they're not all going by that template. Is it gotten to the point, where we're seeing this kind of back channels, compliance, i.e. corruption?
Well, apparently, I can't say that for sure. I believe a lot of the companies, I know in Maryland that I'm very familiar with, I don't think any of the companies are doing that. I think everyone's are on board.
They want to be above board.
Right, they invest all this money. They're not going to risk it all by doing something stupid.
Right, because they're audited. I mean, they can at any given time, a MMCC in Maryland, a person can come in and start auditing them and looking around and seeing what's going on.
Right, and not only that, so you have the state, and then you have some local regulations too. A lot of people have to deal with too, and then you have to worry about federal taxes, and it's just.
Now, do you still have to pay your federal taxes in cash for cannabis?
How else can you?
I would think because there's no safe banking law. There's
right. It's a cash only business.
It's a cash business.
Yeah.
That's going to, that's the one thing that is going to smooth out a lot of this stuff. And and we talked about it last week. There's a lot of stuff being introduced in various, Ed Perlmutter is a Democratic congressman who's tried several different ways. And the Safe Banking Act has passed the House on 4 separate occasions. And when it doesn't pass, he tries to put the same language. I think recently he tried to get it into the defense appropriations bill. And, it's a simple enough thing, but it's just not happening.
No, it's not. I mean, and it's the Senate, the Senate doesn't want to pass any of this stuff.
Well, we're going to keep an eye on that. And there's a lot more to discuss about that. And it's a very broad and deep topic, this whole cannabis regulatory compliance and how it's a barrier to entry for a lot of people who would like to get into the cannabis business. And it's a burden for the people who are in it. But there's a lot of the feeling that, and I get the feeling from talking to that one woman who is a regulator, that there's just a lot of distrust about people who are in the cannabis industry. Yes. Everybody thinks that they all want to cheat.
Right. Well, and, going back to the banking, like in each state, there tends to be one bank that people talk about that you can bank with.
Okay.
So there tends to be in Maryland, I've heard of Severn Bank, but there are definitely some banks who are allowed to bank with cannabis companies, but then we're getting into all kinds of federal regulations, like, the Federal Trade Commission, whoever oversees banks, where does that come in?
Well, that's where the banks have to know. Big bank is going to do it. I went to a seminar one time and they said, you're going to start seeing moderate sized banks maybe getting into it. But all the big banks, they're all afraid of the regulators. The federal regulators, man, they don't want it. They're not going to touch it because of the federal regulators.
That's right, because it's still federally illegal.
Right, exactly. And they're not going. They got too much at stake.
Now, do you know there is something called CanPay? It's sort of like an Apple Pay. And a lot of dispensaries take it, CANN pay. And you have it on your phone, just like you have Apple Pay. And it takes the funds directly out of your bank. And you use this little machine at the dispensary. You hold it up, it takes your funds, you're done. Bam.
Wow. I'm going to have to check that out. So I don't have to come in with cash all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if all the dispensaries take it, but I know where I work.
I saw a sign at the Green Goods up here in Frederick. I saw they had a sign up.
There's always been kind of a profile or a stereotype about who, marijuana users are, what they're like. You have some statistics that kind of, I won't say shatter that myth, but shed some new light on it.
Yeah, because everybody talks about the stoner, and what do you guys when you think of the stoner stereotype, what do you think of usually?
Spicoli and Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, exactly. These people in the movies, they're like sort of like amotivational, losers who can't seem to get their shit together. Dude. So, so there's a website I like to read called the Canigma, and a company called BDSA, they're an analysis firm. They did a survey, and they want to sort of break the myth of the stereo stoner type. And so what they found was that 60% of cannabis consumers in adult use states use it daily. Most of them, 30% still wake and bake, but 62% use it in the evening time.
Now, for those of us who haven't heard that term, what does wake and bake mean?
Yeah, and that's funny because I had never heard wake and bake until I Yeah, no, seriously. I didn't hear this term till I was in the dispensary. You get up and the first thing you do in the morning is you take a hit to get you going, or to smoke a bowl or whatever it is to get you going. So
that's what I did in high school.
Yeah. So what they're saying here is that, 30% still do that, but it's not like the stoner stereotype is like, that's what everybody does every day. And so they're saying it's time to lift the stereotype because more than 80% of users have some sort of, at least part of a college education. They may not have a degree, but they've been to college. So they have some college education.
Okay, so they're educated.
Yeah. 50% hold a full-time job. Well, I don't know. 50% to me isn't a great number, but 50% hold a full-time job. Maybe they have part-time jobs and they're in school.
I think a lot of these are retired.
A lot of them are retired.
Oh, that's you're right. That's a really good one.
And I'm sure there's a statistic on what the age range is.
Especially medical use.
Yes. Well, this is just daily. This is actually not just medical users, but that's a good point, Andrew. That makes total sense. 40%.
I mean, I go to the dispensary and I see people my age and older.
Yeah, well, that's the largest segment is people over 60, I believe, or over 55. Yeah.
It is. 40% are over 40 was what they're saying, which, there's sort of this stereotype again, that it's these young males, Yeah. 46% increased their use over the pandemic. That's not surprising at all.
Not at all. And we covered a lot over the pandemic about the boom of the cannabis industry during that time.
Yes. Huge boom, like double sales and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, same thing with alcohol too, by the way. Alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They got to do something.
Hey, got to see exactly. Now, this is really interesting. I find this interesting. 73% of professionals felt comfortable talking with their coworkers about cannabis. And 58% felt comfortable speaking with their bosses or their clients about cannabis.
58%.
I have.
Yeah. So that's, I guess, the stigma maybe is decreasing some.
I would say so.
You can talk about it. Like I was at a wedding not too long ago, and these were like young to mid 30s. They weren't like little kids, whatever. And they, talking about cannabis was just fine. A normal thing. Just,
Well, we talked to some young people and they go, cannabis, alcohol, it's no big deal. It's all the same. Cannabis is no big deal.
That's right.
So, so one of the conclusions basically is that, they're not seeing like what we consider the burnout users as being the normal or average cannabis consumer. But one interesting fact and we have talked about this a lot, is that some people are drawn to the lower THC products but it's still the high THC products that's driving the sales.
Okay.
You know why? Because I think
people still want to get high
because there's some people, the professional smoker can handle the high THC. They like that. They almost need that
right.
to catch a buzz because they have a high tolerance.
Yeah, they develop a tolerance.
Right.
Well, yeah, THC is easy to develop a tolerance. Although I have to say, if a person would take a week-long tea break, it's amazing. They can go to the lower stuff and still get the same effect.
Well, that's the point. That's the desired effect. We just want to chill out. We don't need to be anxious.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, honestly,
microdosing, baby, microdosing. That's
microdosing, and I recommend people take a tea break. They call it a tea break, a tolerance break. I mean, if you're finding that you're going up and you're using more and more and more cannabis, well, then you built a tolerance, and it might be a good idea to take a week off and see what happens.
So, Faye, tell us what the latest news is from your program at University of Maryland. Anything going on there?
Well, so, this past week we were talking about opioid use and the potential of the opioid use, that if we use cannabis or if we add cannabis to opioids for pain relief, will that be helpful?
Right.
Okay. So the opioid system and the endocannabinoid system both play a major role in pain control, mood regulation, reward processing, and unfortunately, development of addiction. So the question is, we know there's a reward system in both. It feels good. That's why we use it. It also decreases the pain. That's why we use it. Mm-hmm. It reinforces it in the brain. And so we do it again. We either take some more opioids or you have some more weed. But there is indication that the two systems have some crosstalk. So therefore, their interaction, there's some sort of synergy going on.
Neat. Interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, the flip side of this, though, is even though there are synergistic effects between the two, they're also researching whether there can also be an increase in addiction to cannabis or cannabis use disorder. Will the opioids potentially promote a person to use more cannabinoids or cannabis?
Well,
and
some of our listeners might know, I just spent 5 months in the hospital on my back, and part of that was hooked up to a morphine drip, and I'm still on opioid painkillers. Now, I've been going to a pain management doctor, and we've been weaning me off, and I've been using cannabis because I'm taking it's Tylenol 3, which is codeine and Tylenol, and I'm switching and I'm going from Tylenol with codeine to Tylenol with cannabis.
Yeah, and actually we do know that cannabis has opioid-sparing effects.
Right. No,
meaning, you don't use the opioids. Meaning you don't use the opioids. It will give you that same reward system, that same feeling, and that same pain relief.
And I'm not missing the opioids. It's not like I'm going through withdrawals. Now, Phil and I went to a seminar, and then what did the doctor say there?
Well, that doctor said that he gave a particular percentage, and I don't remember what it was, but it was very small, that if you just added a small percentage of THC, maybe, was it 1%? 1% per your dose of opioids, it almost eliminates the need to the buildup of a tolerance to the opioids. It mitigates it quite a bit.
And that's just what we're talking about. It has opioid sparing effects. I know I had a major surgery about 5 years ago, and the doctor gives you only a certain amount of opioids because we all know that opioid addiction is a huge problem, or opioid use disorder. That's the correct terminology.
Yes.
It's a huge problem in this country, and a lot of people die, more so than in car crashes from opioid overdose. And I do know that I use some cannabis as I was weaning off of those opioids, and I never asked for another prescription. I just used what they gave me. And you're really supposed to use it initially if there's going to be a lot of pain, because it's a way to, mitigate the pain, and you want to get ahead of the pain. However, I really do believe that the cannabis helped me not want more of the opioids. So, they do think that they're researching it. They're doing a lot of research right now, because we also know that there is cannabis use disorder, which we talked about in some of our other time. Yep. We talked about that the last time. So, there's research going on in this particular area. A lot of the research is pointing towards the fact that the cannabis does help you use less opioids and wean off of opioids, but a clinician needs to also be aware and watch out for increasing cannabis use and cannabis use disorder.
Right. So, because it can go the other way, the opioid can cause an increase in cannabis use.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. And Faye, as you, go ahead, Andrew.
I don't have a cannabis misuse problem. I've been smoking weed for 20 years, and I have no problem.
20 years?
Okay, 40.
Okay.
There you go. That's what
my God. I'm 60 years old. Yeah. I was probably more than 40.
40 years. Yeah,
How
45.
did you get to be that old?
Oh, man. Just kept on going around the sun.
It's because we keep feeding him.
Keep on going around the sun. Just nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, listen, Andrew and Jay, you ready to face off in a little friendly competition?
No, Andrew and Faye.
I'm Faye.
Faye, not Jay.
I'm not Jay.
I said Faye.
You said Jay.
You said Jay.
Did I say Jay? Andrew and Faye.
Well, they do rhyme. They do rhyme.
That's right.
So,
all right. So Andrew and Faye, we're going to play a little game that I invented. No, I didn't invent the game.
Short little game.
It's a short little game, and it's called Who Said It? So it's a multiple choice. I'm going to give you a quote, and you're going to tell me, based on multiple choice, whose quote it is. All right?
Okay.
You ready? Quote number 1. Some of my finest hours have been spent on my back veranda, smoking hemp and observing as far as my eye can see. Now, who was that? A, Frederick Douglass, B, Thomas Jefferson, or C, George Washington? Faye, what do you say?
I'm going to say A.
Frederick Douglass.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wait. Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson.
He was the one he had the big plantation, and I visited his gardens and all that.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Monticello.
Mount Vernon. I mean, we live in DC and Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon was
and we all know George Washington grew hemp. So I want to say George Washington.
Well, you were right the first time, Andrew. It was Thomas Jefferson. And if I may, I'm just going to add this. This is a separate quote from Thomas Jefferson that I think sums up what we're all about here. If people let government decide which foods they eat and medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in as sorry a state as are the souls of those who live under tyranny. Can I get an amen?
Amen. That's deep, man.
Yeah. Quote number 2.
Bummer, dude. Man, you're harshing my mellow.
Quote number 2. You ready?
Spicoli said that.
I have always loved marijuana. It has been a source of joy and comfort to me for many years, and I still think of it as a basic staple of life, along with beer and ice and grapefruits, and millions of Americans agree with me. Was that A, Dorothy Parker, B, George Carlin, C, Hunter Thompson?
Hunter Thompson.
C, Hunter Thompson.
C, Hunter Thompson. Correct. You're both correct. Okay, so
I wonder where the grapefruits come in.
I don't know, but he must love grapefruits.
For me,
well,
I remember
lemons have limonene, which is one of the terpenes, but I don't know if grapefruits do.
Grapefruits go.
Although I've had weed that tasted very grapefruity.
Yeah,
grapefruits pair very well with vodka.
All right. Yes, they do.
It's true.
It's called a Greyhound. Anyway, score is 2-1. Faye is winning. Quote number 3. The illegality of cannabis is outrageous, an impediment to full utilization of a drug which helps produce the serenity and insight, sensitivity, and fellowship so desperately needed in this increasingly mad and dangerous world. Was that A, Carl Sagan, B, Timothy Leary, or C, George Harrison? Not so easy, huh? What do you say, Faye?
No, I don't know. I can't decide between B or C.
Okay.
I think I'll go with C. It's a little poetic. So
George Harrison. Okay.
Andrew? Was Timothy Leary and Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
I'll go with Carl Sagan.
And you would be correct.
Oh,
Carl Sagan said that. So we're back at. So we're tied 2-2.
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
Quote number
right?
Oh, no, we got a couple of more. We're going to get through all of these. Quote number 4. People say you can abuse marijuana. Well, shit, you can abuse cheeseburgers too, you know? You don't go around closing Burger King because you can abuse something. Now, who said that? Was that A, Seth Rogen, B, Joe Rogan, or C, Tom Rogan?
Whose turn is it to go first?
Yours.
I'm going to say Seth Rogen. Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, you're going to say, Faye?
Seth Rogen.
Okay. Correct answer is Joe Rogan said that. So that's so Andrew has come from behind to take the lead. We got a few more here.
Okay.
Quote number 5. I find it ironic that the most dangerous thing about weed is getting caught with it. Who said that? Was it A, Steve Martin, B, Amy Schumer, C, Bill Murray?
I'll go with C, Bill Murray.
C, Bill Murray. Andrew?
What were the other two?
A, Steve Martin, B, Amy Schumer.
I'm going to go Steve Martin.
All right. And the correct answer is C, Bill Murray.
Ooh, okay.
So we're back to
Yes.
3-3, tie score. Couple more. Quote number 6. I think pot should be legal. I don't smoke it, but I like the smell of it. Was that A, Andy Warhol, B, Tony Bennett, C, Carol Burnett? Andrew.
My turn. I'm going to go Carol Burnett.
C, Carol Burnett. Faye?
That was going to be my guess too.
Both of you on Carol Burnett, you are both incorrect. The answer is A, Andy Warhol.
That was my second choice.
Well.
Oh, well.
You don't get points for second choices.
Oh,
okay,
well.
so we're still tied 3-3. Quote number 7. 2 more. So what if I'm smoking weed on stage and doing what I got to do? It's not me shooting nobody, stabbing nobody, killing nobody. It's a peaceful gesture, and they have to respect that and appreciate that. Was that A, Bob Marley, B, Willie Nelson, C, Snoop Dogg?
That's a tough one. I'm only going to say Bob Marley because I once saw Peter Tosh smoking on stage.
Okay. And Peter Tosh is almost Bob Marley.
Exactly. They come from the same genre. So I figured I'd use that one.
So you're going with A, Bob Marley. Andrew?
I don't have to go with Snoop Dogg.
C, Snoop Dogg. Andrew, you are correct.
That sort of sounds, yeah.
C, Snoop Dogg.
You know a lot more weed trivia than I do.
Yeah. All right. Last one. Andrew, you took the lead 4-3.
Yeah.
Okay. We can finish in a tie or Andrew can win. There was the last quote. I'm going to make this one for 2 points. So anyone can win here.
Okay.
Quote number 8. Prohibition goes beyond the bounds of reason in that it attempts to control man's appetite through legislation and makes a crime out of things that are not even crimes. A prohibition law strikes a blow at the very principles on which our government was founded. Was that A, Woodrow Wilson, B, Abraham Lincoln, C, Franklin Roosevelt? Andrew, your turn.
Abraham Lincoln.
Andrew says Abraham Lincoln. Faye?
That's a tough one. I'm going to agree with Abraham Lincoln just by the way the quote goes.
Okay. Well, you are both correct. Abraham Lincoln said that.
The language is what made me choose that, you know?
Yeah. And you know, you put that together with the Thomas Jefferson quote, and there's just, you know, no way any self-respecting conservatives should not be in favor of legalizing completely. But that's just me. So the game ends, Andrew with 5 points, Faye with 4 points. Andrew, you are the winner.
I knew you would be.
Yeah, by one.
But you've been doing this podcast for a long time.
So, and also one of my greatest passions, one of my hobbies, I mean, for decades, is I read books of quotations all the time.
Okay.
I've read a lot of Abraham.
That's a great hobby.
I read a lot of Abraham Lincoln quotes, so some of them sounded familiar. And also, I can it sounded like Abraham Lincoln too, you know, so.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that little segment, you two. Very friendly competition. And folks, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. If so, tell a friend about Vote Pro Podcast. Get some other people involved with this. They will love you more if you tell them about it and they like it. I promise you. So go on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating. Tell a friend about us. Send us a message. Go to podcast@VoteProPot.com. We have a message line, but I don't know what the number is, so I'm not going to tell you what it is. But we're going to put that in the show description. And Andrew, what's going on the other end of the spectrum there?
We share a lot of information on social networking because there's no way that we can cover everything on our short podcast. So just go to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and just do a search for Vote Pro Pot.